Welcome to the Lovecars on the Grid podcast, your global motorsport roundup with me, Tiff, Needell and Paul Woodman.
Welcome to Lovecars on the Grid, your global motorsport podcast roundup. There wasn't much in terms of racing as the season's finished for the year now, but there are a couple of things to cover. There's, of course, Extreme E and WTCC as well. Probably our least favourite, Tiff. I'd maybe hasten to add.
We'll talk about them later in the show. We'll talk about which was the most exciting of the two least exciting motorsports that we have in the world. But it
might be exciting for other people, but there's still plenty of other stuff to talk about as well. There's that incident in Monaco with Perez, the crash, rearing its ugly head. Bit of BTCC news. Ferrari, are they going to change things in terms of strategy? Mud flaps on F1 cars, Formula 2 testing, and much more. But first of all, the hot news in the car world is it's Shivram's birthday this week.
It's Shivram's birthday.
We want to wish him the happiest of birthdays. If you don't know Shivam, he does a car review channel on YouTube. Brilliant stuff, and we love following him. And we love his motivation
he's a man in a wheelchair that doesn't drive, and yet has a passion for sport and passion for cars. So it's happy birthday to Shivram.
Yeah, happy birthday, Shivam. Many happy returns. So we're going to go to WTCC first. Do you enjoy that, Tiff? Has it been an exciting season? Is there lots to talk about?
I think we should go to the news. Let's leave them till later.
Okay.
Let's go to the hot gossip, the news, the Perez and Redbulls. We'll leave the other things till later because the Perez things come up again. And this is only because someone tweeted that, again, so much stuff comes on the internet that Perez was going to get sacked. Because they've signed Daniel Ricciardo, who I think just as a reserve driver, and I think he's going to be more of a PR man for them. Even Ricciardo's thinking, well, I'm not going to go to all the races. I can't be bothered to do that. I want to live life a bit, So he's not really the reserve driver in the modern manner. I think he's more of PR and obviously on hand.
He sells merchandise.
I know. And this blogger or vlogger or whatever said, that Perez was going to be sacked because of Monaco. And this is ever since, the last race in Brazil, this sort of Perez deliberately crashing had come to my mind. But I hadn't really looked at it. But this guy posted the onboard of the Perez Monaco thing, which I'd never seen before. And honestly, I'm not dragging this up just for the sake of it. So now, unless someone's doctored the sound and because it's got the throttle control and everything full on board, it's the most blatant, deliberate spin I've ever seen in a Formula 1 car. I was shocked. Now, I was in Monaco at the time. I don't know whether you watched Sky. Did Sky Television, someone please tell us, did they ever analyse Perez's crash in qualifying? Because modern Formula 1 cars, all their torquey engines, all the power, it's very much delivering the car to the apex off throttle and then progressively opening the throttle on the way out because you've got so much torque which will spin up the rear wheels. And the video, I looked at another video as well, which had the same soundtrack as well. So I'm believing it's not doctored. The lap he did his quickest time. He goes into the apex and then progressively the throttle into the tunnel and disappears. Now, on the spin one, he's halfway into the apex. There's this sudden blat of throttle. You hear the revs rise, the wheels spin, and he's sideways and in the barrier. Now, funnily enough, it's actually a technique I use when I'm doing my Thruxton passenger rides in the BMWs.
Yeah, absolutely.
They've
Power on, get the back end out.
I'll turn it in, I'll black the throttle, which spins up the rear wheels, gets me sideways, and then I pick up the throttle again to create the drift. And so I can understand Max being upset about it. And I can't believe it hadn't been more written about the Monaco weekend. So I'm not trying to dig up that. It's just that I hadn't looked at it before. And I just,
So I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate. If you were going to do that, and jeopardize everybody else beating you for the pole position, why would you damage a car? Why wouldn't you just outbrake yourself out of the tunnel? What's the next little chicane, Roscoe? What's the?
Yeah. Why would
you not just do what Rosberg did and pretend to outbrake yourself? Because then once you're there, it's an automatic yellow flag. So why would you jeopardize the car? I don't understand.
Only a rear wing. You knew it wasn't going to hit anything too hard.
Yeah, but didn't science go into it?
Yeah,
no, very close.
Maybe. Yeah, no, science hit him. Yeah, that was the extra damage. I don't know. I'm just amazed when I saw it. If you haven't seen it, all I'm saying is if you haven't seen it, go Google and have a look because I was quite shocked at how blatant it looked. But yes, he could have gone off elsewhere, but maybe he thought, well, Bottas has done the escape road trick and maybe I've got to do something different.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's pretty bit extreme, but it's going to be interesting what happens next year with Red Bull. But Perez, I think Ricciardo. As much as you and I both wanted him to leave and get some new blood in, Ricciardo over Perez, I would choose actually, not because he's a better driver, just because he brings a bit of excitement to the.
I think he's a better driver as well. I think he'd be nearer to. I don't know.
And then Lando we go back to this story we've been discussing all year. Lando has absolutely smashed him. So get Lando in the seat.
That would be the best thing. Yeah, that would be the best thing. Lando, Ferrari. My science is doing a pretty good job at Ferrari, so I'd keep him in, but I'd Red Bull Lando. But I think they did talk to him. But I think the contracts were Simon McLaren a long time ago.
Right.
The other thing, Ferrari news.
Good job at Ferrari. So Sainz and Leclerc might be doing a good job at Ferrari, but it's fair to say not everybody is, and there's a lot of rumours speculation as to what's going to happen. I thought he'd be out by now.
Mattia Binotto. But they talk about him resigning. Maybe they don't want to sack him. But like football managers, if you sack them, you have to pay them off their salaries, don't you? As they resign, you don't. So, but I don't know whether it's Binotto's problem or whose it is. And I suppose if you're the head of name on the list, then you have to take all the blame. But he's obviously got strategists, so maybe he has to sack his strategists if they're not doing a good job. But yeah, it seems to be hanging in the air, this Binotto. It's been going for about 2 weeks now that he's going to be resigning or sacked.
Italian media came out on the weekend and they said that it's going to happen today and he's going to be sacked today, and it never happened. And
it's like football managers, just like football managers.
But normally there's
in the morning.
Yeah, you're right. But normally there's no smoke without fire. He's got to go, in my opinion. He is the head. He is leading it. He's got his strategists and his team underneath him, but he's made so many cock-ups this year that
who wants the job? Ferrari tend to put sort of insiders. So they tend to grab someone out of the car part of the family, don't they? To sort of, okay, you do that job now. They don't really sort of research who they're going to get. But what about mud flaps? That was I don't know, a lot of fuss. I'm sure it's not April the 1st, is it? It's December the 1st coming up. To my mind, most of that spray comes from the flow under the car dust. I don't know what percentage of the spray is off the wheels and what percentage is spat out of the ground effect tunnels. They'd look terrible, wouldn't they?
They would look terrible, but if it means having races and not having to call races off like we had with Belgium a few years ago, then maybe it's
but the designers who run our sport, the flipping aerodynamicists who seem to run most teams, I mean, they'd be crying, wouldn't they? Imagine putting a mud guard in with your rear wing. With Adrian Newey's whole book is all about getting rid of little vortexes here and there. If you can get rid of that vortex and move that bit of air there, then the car will go faster. And then you put a flipping great Caterham mudguard. Not the Caterham mudguards. I'm not trying to insult Caterhams here at all, Paul. But putting a Caterham mudguard over your rear wheels.
Careful what you say, because you're coming to the Caterham dinner on the 10th of
I know,
December,
that's why
so
I quickly backed out of that one. But I can't see that happening. I can't. They're talking about putting wing mirrors as well inside the cockpits, like the sports cars have now, the screen inside. But they sort of said there was nowhere inside a cockpit to put it, and even if you could, without a roof over the head, shadowing sunlight from behind, like looking at a phone when you try to photo, if the sun's behind, you can't see anything. So lots of talk about little things.
They'll be driving saloon cars before we know it. Now we had the halo, and then we'll have a cockpit.
Yeah, we've got the duct over the front, and we've got a little thing over the front wheel. So yeah, they'll slowly close them in.
How many more overtakes do you think there were this season over last season? Because
I have no interest. I'm sure that you're going to throw me some like your pit stop statistics, because most of the overtakes they count is when someone goes into the pits to change their tyres. So 5 people go by you. Apparently, I'm not sure, they're all included in the overtakes.
They're the only overtakes.
So what are you going to tell
599 overtakes in 2021 and 785. So 31% increase in overtakes, but there were more races as well. So that's a bit of a Mickey Mouse stat, isn't it? I'm clutching at straws there.
It's got to be. It's not on the track. I'm sure I can't put it on the track.
Yeah.
If they came up with how many not DRS assisted overtakes, it'd be about 6.
Yeah, but
anyway,
DRS is not. That's not a bad thing. DRS is not a bad thing. If it gets overtakes, it's not a bad thing.
I've now resigned myself to telling myself that all DRS is giving slipstream, which has been taken away by the aero, because cars don't have slipstreams anymore. But I still think, as I said last week, they should increase it to 2 seconds. That DRS will come into act.
What do you think? Please let us know in the comments below, or get onto Twitter if you're listening to this on a podcast somewhere. And
the F1 boys were testing. They're all testing last week. Were Tuesday, 4-day testing then in Abu Dhabi. All the young drivers having a crack, and I don't know these testing times. You say, if I was a team manager, Ferrari job, maybe, yeah, I could. I speak a little bit Italian, well, not a lot. I would always get my drivers to put a time on the top of the board. I just want a bit of team morale. And so you never know what you can read out of testing. Mercedes, Lewis was 17th. Their Danish junior driver, Frederick Vesti, was 22nd, and George Russell was 23rd, 2 seconds off the top times. Well, what were they doing? McLaren didn't seem to bother with lap times either. Oscar Piastri, their new kid, he was 14th, the best McLaren, Lando 18th. But Ferrari took it my way. They were first, second, and third. Robert Schwartzman, who I've kept on talking about for the Haas seat. I tweeted to my two favourite journalists trying to attract their attention, saying, "Is it the
who are your two favourite journalists? Please tell me, us."
Oh, now you've got me. Why do you ask me names I can't remember? Adam Cooper and Mark Hughes, Motorsport, and Cooper Man and Mark Hughes at Motorsport. Neither responded. Because
they're not your
Ferrari always had this, allegedly, this choice of the second Haas driver due to their thing, hence Mick Schumacher was in. And Ferrari seemed to keep faith with Robert Schwartzman, he might be in his contract, I don't know, to do the Ferrari testing and stuff on these occasions. He's a Russian driver that's now got an Israeli license to try and open the doors. And, he was third fastest. He was 0.15 of a second behind Sainz, who was quickest, with Leclerc sandwiched in between. So he's doing a great job with these tests. He was good in Formula 2s and Formula 3s. I don't know his full stats.
It's a bit, who knows what load they're doing, what tyres are doing. There's a guy at Caterham, I'm not going to mention him. There's a guy at Caterham, every single test day, he'll say, I've got the lap record, I'm faster than anybody, I'm the fastest going, nobody's faster than me, new lap record. And he's never qualified. I think his best qualifying is 10th, maybe 15th, something like that. Every single time.
Yeah, but Ferrari wouldn't give Schwartzman, I don't know, maybe they would, I don't know. But nobody can tell me why Schwartzman's name isn't. I think it's an anti-Russian thing, but nobody would admit it.
Well, he looks quick, doesn't he? He's right on the pace. He's on the pace. It's incredible.
Much better choice for Haas. Much better future thinking. Pierre Gasly decided he'd show himself and came fourth in the Alpine.
Yep.
With Jack Doohan was 11th. He's only 0.7 behind Gasly. He was pretty good for a rookie having a crack. Max was 5th, not bothering too much with that. Liam Lawson, their rookie, was 10th, only 0.4 behind Verstappen. So Liam Lawson's going back to New Zealand saying, I was only 0.4 behind Verstappen. So I think it does. I mean, the Williamses were 6th and 7th. And Logan Sargent was only 10th behind Alexander Albon. I think if you're going into a whole winter break, psychologically, the Williams boys are feeling a bit happy,
Yeah. It'd be lovely to see Williams back, wouldn't it? It'd be lovely to see so many teams come back. There's such a massive discrepancy with the performance of the teams. It'd be so lovely if it just suddenly, all of a sudden bunched up, but we're not going to see that for a long time, if ever at all.
They're getting there slowly. I mean, always, every regulation changes. They seem to get closer and closer and closer towards the end while everybody gets the science sorted.
But it's a level playing field. It's the same for everybody, unless you're Red Bull, you spend a bit more money on your catering. But otherwise, it's a very level playing field.
Yeah. Then the Formula 2 boys, whose budgets are always so expensive that young drivers can't afford to do Formula 2. And yet they had this silly last round of the championship 6 weeks after Monza, dragging their season out. And then they had not 1, not 2, but 3 full days testing, pounding round and round Abu Dhabi. And the cost of that on their budgets, I mean, it's got to be 10, 20 grand a day probably to run a Formula 2 team like that.
At least more. It's got to be much more than that. Much more.
Anyway, loads of people came out on top depending on which day you were running on and how much fuel you were running on. And the good news that one is Ollie Behrman, our young, and I'm convinced he's going to be a star of the future. There's another Lando. He was third in one of the sessions, just a 10th and a half slower than his Prema teammate, the Finn, which is the Frederick Vesti, so who's about to start his second season. So Ollie looked really good on his debut test sessions, and I've got high hopes for him next year in Formula 2, and to give someone Britain to chase and cheer for in Formula 3.
Well, and likewise, we want someone to come through to Formula 1 because we've got a good old field. But you want to keep the conveyor belt going, the sausage machine going of new talent coming through.
Sainz out, Behrman in. a couple of years' time.
He's
a Ferrari Academy. He's a Ferrari Academy kid, so he's got the Ferrari help.
Well, don't forget Callum Ilott as well. He's there in the wings.
Yeah, they never bring you back. That's the tragic thing about once you're stuck out on a limb. Yeah. Although, having said that, Nick de Vries, had a good run as well. He was quite well up there in the testing. It's good to see he has come back from the wilderness. Also back to the wheels in World Rally. Good news for Craig Breen, who we talked about last week being dropped by Ford. He's back to Hyundai. Only a shared driver with Danny Sordo, so he's only doing sort of half a season, but at least he's got his place back. Of course, Ott Tanak left that team, and the Finnish driver Esa-Pekka Lappi, who was with the part season with Toyota last year, he's got the full-time seat with Hyundai that Tanak had left. And we're all waiting and hoping that Tanak will be in the Ford team, because they're lacking a team leader, but nothing's coming up from there. There's no room anymore in the Toyota for Oliver Solberg's been dropped. He was a bit like, he's always the son of Petter, world champion. Yeah. And he was a bit like the son of Michael Schumacher, Mick Schumacher. And he crashed a bit too much mid-season. And sadly, he's been left out. So quite a bit of changing of the seats in rallying, even though there aren't many of them to change.
Yeah, there's few and far between OEMs in World Rally now, isn't there? Moving forward as well.
I mean, Ford aren't even confirmed to be back, I don't think. I'm assuming they are. I haven't read anything. But it's very quiet in the Ford world at the moment.
It's a bit like BTCC, people dropping out and things are changing and teams are changing.
It was news today. The Sisley Motorsport, after 10 years, it's a family-run team, the Morgan family, who sponsors his son, Adam Morgan, one of the front runners, a winner this year at Thruxton. They ran BMWs last year, and they've announced today that they're dropping out of BTCC. And you worry there that the budgets are going up and up and up. I don't think the hybrids has helped them at all. I think it hasn't made the racing any better. And it's put the prices up. It's put weight on the cars, which stresses all the components and wishbones, and everything else falls apart quicker. So you do worry that BTCC's bubble could burst, but with Sisley going out, which is a great shame.
Yeah, it is. Big shame. But the hybrid thing has got to happen, hasn't it? Sadly, it's got to happen because
only for political reasons. It hasn't got to happen.
They're not just going to make internal combustion just for a bunch of BTCC drivers, are they? They're not going to have massive development.
There's a racing engine. They've got their Toka engine, which you can buy off the shelf.
And I guess globally, we're at the forefront of endorsing this ridiculous EV only thing by 2030. But other countries aren't. So they're still going to manufacture the engines in other countries for other countries as well.
They have changed BT. They got a bit more boost. They got the tires back again, the quick tire and the slow tire, trying to mix it up a bit. But I do slightly worry that budgets are going too high in British touring cars.
Because was it always a series that kind of anyone could aspire to get into? It was
no, not really. No, not in the mid-90s. It was big mega budgets, with 10 manufacturers employing 2 drivers each and 3 drivers. It was a wonderful series in the super touring era, when more manufacturers were selling straightforward, front-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive, normally aspirated touring cars. So
best BTCC driver of all time?
Oh, I can't tell. It might be someone. I don't want to give anyone a bit of a boost up,
Would it be Plato? Has he won? Has he had the most wins?
I don't know. He's had the most wins, but he won a lot of races during a very easy period when it all fell apart. It was post Super Touring. It's true. It was only him and Ivan Muller winning every other race. I mean, Jason's obviously right up there. Yes, Alain Menu, Turkin. Turkin's more a modern era. I think it's very hard to compare the 90s super touring drivers, where there were many more professional drivers, but it was really high quality of drivers. Whereas nowadays, there's half a dozen really good drivers and a lot of, average drivers buying their way in. So I don't think the talent is as strong or the competition is as strong in the last 5 or 10 years at the head of the field.
Ash Sutton, he's got to be one of the best.
Ash, yeah. I mean, he would have been sensational, but that's what I mean. There's only about half a dozen.
Paul O'Neill's got to be the best ever, surely.
He's the most likeable ever, the most entertaining ever. Well, I'm sorry, Paul, you're not quite on the hot shot list of my hot shot lists.
Okay, let's talk about.
Steve Soper, John Cullen, yes, great. So that was all the news. Any more news or gossip did you pick up this week?
No, all I've got to report on really is Extreme E and WTCC.
Yeah.
So
Well, that was last. That was the competition. I watched them both. Which entertained me most, do you think, out of Extreme E or the World Touring Car Cup?
I think Extreme E.
It did.
For TV.
It did. It did. I mean, although it wasn't on TV, I think the highlights it was on Discovery Plus. So I was trying to find out where to watch it.
It sounds like one of our TV shows.
Yeah. Where is it?
Tucked away, like somewhere.
Anyway, I got it on internet on Extreme E on their YouTube channel or whatever it was. And it was the Energy X Prix from Uruguay. I think it was highlighting sustainable mining. In fact, all it was the people from Southwest England would have loved it because it was just simply grass track racing. It was just a blooming great field with, of course, grass track racing. We slowly turned to dust racing. So yeah, I'm not quite sure whether
a couple of spectacular crashes.
Well, loads, yeah, but I mean, I'm still the trouble with Extreme E is the teams and the names that are thrown at you like machine gun bullets from the commentators. I'm sorry, Andrew Coley and Jenny Gale. You might be told to commentate like that, but you're just trying to kill my ears. They're salt in my ears.
I don't mind it.
It takes my mind off what, and there's all the X's. It's RXR against X44 with Sainz XE and Excite team, and then of course you've got one driver in, and then you can't remember who the co-driver is for that, and everything's unbelievable and wow, and look at that, and they've got to take we know they've got to overtake. That's what racing is. Don't shout in my ear. They need to overtake. Oh, it's exhausting commentary. It's exhausting.
But I think the whole thing, Carlos, what's his father's name?
Carlos Sainz. Senior and junior. Carlos Sainz. They're both Carlos.
Of course. I had your disease there, forgetting your name. But look, he's a phenomenal driver, one of the best ever rally drivers of all time. But you're still a phenomenal driver, but you're not going to go and race in the top pinnacle of racing now.
Well, it's the Rallycross boys. The quickest drivers are the Hansons and the
Tiff,
Wutalinskis.
Exactly. But he's an older gentleman.
Yeah.
So it almost takes a little bit away from the whole thing and from the other competitors as well, because he's not going to be as competitive as the younger guy. As quick.
I mean, they are spectacular, these beach buggies. I mean, they're fun to watch. I always say with motorsport, if a car on its own going through a corner is exciting to watch, then it's a good formula. And that to me is one of my...
Yeah, I agree.
Those buggies, they are good. I mean...
They look amazing.
They were rolling over like pins because, of course, as soon as the grass track ruts came in, 3 of the women went over in the qualifying stages, barrel rolling over and over.
Didn't you do that once at JK's place or something, Jamiroquai's place?
Yes, that was a little buggy thing. Yeah, I did a 360
But you
roll.
Get a rut. The wheel goes in, and they got massive big chunky tyres, so you get in a rut, and then it...
Over it goes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's all. It's all spectacular, but apart from the commentary, which drives me mad. But the only reason why it got exciting was it all came down to the grand finale as to who was going to win the championship, because the RXR, the Rosberg X Racing, which has won the last 2 years, I think, they led the points by quite a long way. But Michaela Arlin Kotulinski, who was the co-driver in the RA, she was one of the 3 women to roll in the qualifying, which put them on the back foot. They didn't qualify the semi-finals. They then got into the crazy race, which we all call the last chance race, much simpler, last chance race, stopping. But they had to win, and they didn't win the crazy race, so they weren't in the finals. So they had a very healthy points lead, which meant that X44, Hamilton's team, just had to finish 3rd to win the championship. So it was quite tense, the final, because Sebastian Loeb, the driver, you thought you got the best man at the wheel. But of course, he doesn't race that often against these rallycross nuts. And he got barged out at the second corner a bit and dropped to 4th. And then by the end of the day, the dust was getting worse and worse and worse as the track dried out. And at certain sections, he just couldn't follow close enough, which annoys me again about the stupid thing of the racing. So he couldn't get back to the 3rd place they needed.
That's what frustrates me as well.
They then go into the switch. It's pit lane to you and me. Switch. A lot of commentary on the switch. And now they've got to change drivers. They've got to open the door. They've got to put the seat in. Yes, I can see that. I know that. And they've got to check. They've got to put the belts on. when you're watching pictures of motorsport, as I was told by a producer, I work with Murray Walker, there are times when you have to say, let the pictures do the talking. We all know we're watching a person changing driver and putting a seat in and putting belt. Don't keep shouting at me what's going on.
You can say it in a nice way, can't you? You can say, and for those who don't know, this is the part where you do A, B, and C. But
well, yeah, but they repeat.
It's not exciting. It's not exciting.
It's one commentator to the other. It just goes from collie to gal, from collie to gal.
I love Jenny Gal. I love Jenny.
She's a lovely lady, but it's just assaulting my ears. Tell me below if I'm wrong or right. Tell me. Let's have some comments.
He's been grumpy. He's been very grumpy.
Anyway,
tell him below he's been very grumpy.
Cristina Gutierrez, who was also one of the women that rolled in the qualifying, was now going out in fourth place in the X44 Hamilton's team, having to try and get that third place to win the championship. But she couldn't do anything about it either, and was heading for fourth. So now the RX, or the Rosberg team, sitting in the pits watching, we're all thinking we're going to win it again. When all of a sudden, again, the penalties. This is the other problem with Extreme E. I know we have to have penalties, but they seem to be non-stop in Extreme E. It was announced that the Andretti team had been speeding in the switch zone, speeding in the pit lane, and were given a 7-second penalty, which promoted Gutierrez to third, and they won the championship. So it was tense and exciting, but decided by a pit lane speed infringement.
Very exciting.
So it was entertaining.
Went down to the wire. Have you got any desires to travel to Uruguay after watching that?
No, but I don't know any more about sustainable mining because I fast-forwarded through all those bits.
But it's lucky because you wouldn't be able to travel anyway because it would affect your carbon footprint as well. So,
well, yeah. So I don't know where it's going. There were supposed to be spectators there. I couldn't see any spectators. There were any, because that's the other thing about this sport. So there's no spectators. It's not on mainstream television in Britain. I don't know where it is on television. You have to go and search for it. There are lots of great names involved, Hamilton and Rosberg and Loeb and Sainz. And it is spectacular, but it's so short, sharp and crazy and roll. They do roll over those things.
They do, don't they?
They're quite scary.
So if that didn't float your boat and didn't get you excited.
No, it did. I mean, it entertained because that battle for the championship was quite tense and exciting. So, it was good. It was all right.
Good. And it's always got to be male-female, hasn't it? It's always got to be a pair.
Yeah, so it's quite fun. We had Katie Mannings. In fact, she might have been the one that was speeding. I don't know if it was the one speeding out, which was Katie in the Andretti car, or her teammate who drove in, whose name I forgot. Katie, of course, a great star of that series.
Normally it's driving in, isn't it? Because you brake too late.
Yeah, they had to brake too late and overshoot. But, you see them purring in at slow speeds. Yes.
And that pit lane, what is the safety zone? No,
that mission control, empower your engine.
That's too long as well. You've got this huge area. For those of you who haven't seen it, you've got this huge switch zone, pit lane, whatever they call it, area. And it goes on and on and on. Anyway, it's good for them.
The World Touring Car Cup, I think, thankfully, came to an end forever, hopefully, unless they come up with a better formula. They went down to Jeddah to the Saudi Grand Prix track. They used half the Grand Prix track. Awful, boring, dull, featureless track. But you never knew where they were on the track. There's huge effect. There may have been some people, spectators, but they put the grandstand, I think, on the start-finish. There might have been about 5 spectators there. The championship was decided the day before in qualifying. Now, I haven't bothered to read the rules and regulations. Somehow, Mikel Azcona, the Spanish kid, in his Hyundai, won the championship after qualifying somewhere. He didn't qualify on pole, so it wasn't. Maybe they had points in qualifying. I don't know. So he won the championship, and Hyundai won the championship.
Given our reviews of the only 2 races last weekend, I can now start to understand why we never ever get invites to these events or any events. Actually,
we tell the truth. We tell the truth.
I think. Hopefully people enjoy that. Yeah.
You would not have flown out to Saudi to watch 15 cars that all look identical. I have to look at the grills to see if it's an Audi or a Audi or a Hyundai or a Honda, the 3 cars involved, because they all look about similar. It's processional racing in a straight line. They just queue up. And it's just, the only overtaking happens with contact every time. The commentators were doing a good job. There was Tom Gable, Matt Neal. Matt Neal was out there trying to spice it up. Every commentator now when the racing is done, they always tyres. Tyres are going to degrade. They're going to use their tyres. They're obsessive the only way they could think it, or brakes apparently were overheating in Saudi. We were also excited that maybe they'd run out of brakes. And only towards the end of the first race did anyone try to overtake anyone else. And they just closed the door to these concrete walls now. You can be half alongside and the car in front will just close the door until you're hitting each other. They can then hold opposite lock with the front wheel drive while being hit and escape the corner still in the lead. There wasn't a single overtaking manoeuvre that didn't end up in contact. And it's just banger racing to my mind.
Ridiculous. Yes. Stock car racing, banger racing, ridiculous. And in fact, it's an insult to stock car racing, banger racing, because those boys have brilliant races.
Yeah. I mean, quality drivers, the money spent, and the cars are really high tech. You look inside the cockpits before they head off, and it's amazing money spent. But that championship has gone. I mean, Touring Cars World Championship to me was 3-hour races, 2 drivers, 4 Capris, Mustangs, powerful cars. Rob Huff, though, the only British driver there, he won the Privateers Championship, 8th overall in the drivers' table. So congratulations to Rob. Rob's a wonderful charge. He'll race anywhere, anything. So he went out to Macau again because he won more races in Macau than anyone else. And I think he managed to get a seat in a Chinese Touring Car Championship or something and managed to win another race. So Huffy was one of the stars. And he finished 4th, I think, in the second race.
Who was the best driver you've ever raced or knew of that never went on to do anything big?
Oh, now you're doing that to me again, aren't you?
Go on, put you on the spot.
Well, my old mate Jeff Lees should have gone on the bet. He was really quick. He was probably one of the quickest drivers. I mean, he did do a couple of Grand Prix, but I think he was underrated. But he was like a garage mechanic from Atherton, so it probably worked against him.
Okay, it just shows you do need a little bit of luck as well. You obviously need an immense amount of skill, but the amount of people that actually make it in the big time. And finally, switch off now if you're not interested in football. Prediction for the World Cup, because the World Cup is in full swing.
I don't know. It's all upstairs and downstairs, isn't it? Well, the finals, the day for our next podcast will be after the finals on Sunday, is it?
No,
I think
the week after. No, it's still 2 weeks to go. Because I go next week.
Now, really?
Hyundai, if you're listening to this, just drop me a quick message. I need to have a chat with you. Been invited out there, Tiff.
Well, no, next week's much more important. It's the Autosport Awards. On Sunday night, it'll be announced whether it was Ollie Behrman, who I think must win. He actually came second last year. They don't put first, second, or third. He was beaten last year by Zach O'Sullivan. And Zach had a good season in Formula 3, but not in a good as team as Ollie. But now Zach is in the Premier team that Ollie was in. So hopefully this year we're going to have Zach O'Sullivan winning the Formula 3 and Ollie Behrman winning Formula 2, or probably not winning it first season rookie, but going to be up there. So Ollie Behrman, I think, must win it unless something went wrong. Jamie Chadwick has another attempt. So they got her into another Autosport Award. The GB3 champion, Luke Browning, he's got his first Autosport Awards. He's in the running. And also Louis Foster, who made the interesting choice to give up on Grand Prix dreams and go IndyCar. Went over to America, having done Formula 3 last year, wasn't it? And won the Indy Pro 2000 Championship. So good luck to Louis. He's gone that way. So, Autosport Awards, World Cup going on. Nobody seems to be dominating the World Cup. I've no idea.
There's bound to be a little bit of gossip, a few rumours. We'll stir a few bits and pieces up as well.
We can do a season review. When are you going out then? Are you going out to watch? Which days?
I don't know. It's tag your sponsor, Lucky Supercars. He's my sponsor, so I'll have to ask him. But I think for 5 days, 4 days to hopefully get the England game, if England should happen to get through their group, because they're making hard work of that. But we don't want to bore you with football. Motorsport podcast. Thanks for joining us. And we will
talking of overtaking, just quickly, if today you go on Twitter, I retweeted, there's a magnificent last few laps of a mini Miglia race from mid-90s around Castle Coombe, where they're side by side everywhere. They don't touch a single time. Yeah, you look at any modern day front wheel drive, it's just bashing into it.
You do see that often at Goodwood as well, don't you? In that type of racing, they have incredible.
Yeah, and you don't hit each other because you know that it could be a big crash, and your car is quite fragile, and you could get hurt. And I know the drivers just will close the door, and they'll
It shouldn't be allowed. It shouldn't be allowed. But
they go down the straights even. They deliberately bang the car next door in the straight to say, "I'm not giving in. I'm not giving in."
I know Caterham gets a bit of a bad rap sometimes with the amount of accidents because I seem to attract it. But
that's just because it's got amateurs that don't know what they're doing, that lose control.
Yeah, but there is proper wheel to wheel, and there's a lot of respect as well. So There's proper wheel to wheel, bumper to bumper.
I remember standing with you actually on the entrance to Russell Corner when we saw the finale of the other group in Caterham's.
Yeah.
The most magnificent battle for the lead, and every time they go into Richie.
Don't get me started, because that was with my ex-girlfriend Katie. On that note, we gotta go. Oh.
Bye everyone.
Thanks for joining. Cheers.